everybody, to another Empowering Your Circle podcast. I'm Hazel, and my guest today is Sarah Hayes. She has a business called Embodied Well. I'm going to find out a little bit more from her in a minute, but she's a financial wellbeing coach, but bringing together her experience from over 20 plus years in financial industry and her gentle, caring personality, which connects us with our money, our emotions, and our nervous system. So she uses a range of different things, which hopefully I'm going to find out a little bit more as we go through, but breathwork and EFT and, an intuitive coaching to support people like me and you through financial overwhelm, bringing about a calm and sustainable relationship to us and our finances, which in my opinion is a really important thing that we all need to know about. So I've been networking with Sarah now for about a year. And so we got to know each other. She did take a bit of a twist during last year, but for the better for all of us, I think. So welcome, Sarah.
Thank you for having me. It's really nice to be here.
So we're going to find out a little bit more. What I was going to ask is your business obviously links, as I mentioned before, money, emotions, the nervous system, but would be really good for us listeners and stuff to know kind of what drew you into doing this. What was your pivot into this, and why is it so important for us to know about it now and to realize that this is important for all of us?
Okay. So as you said, I've worked in and around financial services for 20 years. I worked in banking in the days before children. And I left banking when my second daughter was born. So that's nearly 14 years ago. In that time, I then set up a bookkeeping practice, which has been hugely successful. But in lockdown, when it all kind of calmed down and quietened down, and we had that time and space to think, I started, and I was sort of 7, 8 years into the business by that point. I kind of got that 7 year itch. It's like
Right.
something here isn't quite, it's not floating my boat anymore. There's something else I could be giving. So during lockdown, I trained as a financial coach. Now, a financial coach in that sense was very much about mindset, very, very much about the early narratives of our money stories, how we viewed money growing up, the stories we heard from friends, families, caregivers, church, etc., etc. And it was a brilliant place to be. And I have, as many people in financial services have, we have our own story around money. We all have our own story around money. But people in financial services, I won't lie, are a little bit like builders. We know the stuff, we know how to do it for everybody else. We don't necessarily do it for ourselves. And that became really evident when I joined the financial coaching course. The financial coaching course I did was only open to people that have a financial background. We had to be interviewed. So it wasn't
Right.
open to anybody that was life coaching or coaching in another way. It was only open to financial planners, mortgage advisors, accountants, bookkeepers. You had to have a broader financial knowledge to do
Wow.
this course, which was beautiful because we could really see where we get ourselves stuck around making those financial decisions. And I did that course and it was brilliant. But I still felt after all the training, and after all doing all the work myself, I still felt it was hard work. There felt like there was
Mhm.
something missing. It was very much a hammer to crack a walnut kind of situation. It was like, tell me. And sometimes, especially around money and those big financial decisions, the logical part of our brain knows what we should be doing, but internally, we don't make those decisions. We pull ourselves back, we sabotage, we don't go there for whatever reason. And I was really aware that there was something missing. Purely by accident, 2 years ago, my neurodivergent daughter ended up having a really tough time, and I was looking for something to help me help her. So I very selfishly joined up to learn to be a breathwork coach. Um, And I had, at that point, I had no intention of linking breathwork to
Mhm.
um, financial coaching. What I did have the intention of doing, because alongside this, I was doing a financial trauma awareness course. With one of the bonuses I got with that was my EFT tapping practitioner qualification, and that was a
Wow.
bonus. Now, ideally, I wouldn't have run the two together, but that's kind of the way the universe threw it at me. And it was like, crack on, off you go. So to link the EFT to the financial coaching made complete sense. Even right in the early days of making this work, it worked. The breath work was like, no, this is about me helping my kids. I think I was 8 weeks into the breathwork course and I went, oh my word, everybody needs to know this because I could
A
feel
light bulb
the
moment.
proper light bulb moment. I could feel the difference that 8 weeks of regular breathwork was making to me and my family, not just on the family neurodivergent spectrum, all the stuff that comes with that, but in my day-to-day decision making, I was much calmer. I was much more aware. I was much less rash in my decision making. And it was like, and that was the earliest glimmer of this works. This can all link together in a really beautiful way. And that was the missing piece. Because so many of our financial decisions, although we think they're from our head, they're actually from our heart or from our gut. And we can get in our way really quite significantly get in our way. We know what we want to plan to do, but
Yeah.
if it doesn't feel right, and when I say feel right, I mean feel right in our body, we won't do it. We can have the best plan, the best spreadsheet, the best,
Yeah.
business plan, but if it doesn't feel right, it ain't happening because your
No.
body will quite literally say no, no, no.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because that is exactly the way a lot of people do feel. Like, when you go and you think this is a big purchase, I know sometimes I'll sit there and I'll think, like, I will think to myself, do I really need to do this? And I will question it and question it. And then all of a sudden I might put it to the side and then I'll go, you know what? I think I do want that, but it's probably not necessarily on the spot that I'm doing it. I don't know.
Yeah, and a lot
And
of
a
the
much,
time, if I
yeah, go,
if I work with somebody that has that impulsive purchase sort of profile and has that guilt and shame around those impulsive purchases, one of the first things I say to them is, right, do you really want it? Do you really need it? And if there is any element of doubt, stick it in a basket and leave it there for 48 hours. If it's still there and you still really want it in 48 hours time, you want it. And that's fine.
mm,
And there's no guilt and shame to be had in that. If we're just buying something because we're trying to suppress an emotion, trying to chase a dopamine hit, trying to fit into a circle that we desperately want to fit into, they're not necessarily the right reasons to make that purchase. So we
mm.
need to put that space between I want and I really want.
Yeah, true. I like that because my mum used to say because I used to go shopping and she'd say just buy it, and I'm like, no, I'm not just buying it. I said I don't know if I really want it,
It.
and so
It's
she'd say no, 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 and I'm like no. So I'd put it, and I said we're going to go and have coffee and whatever, and if I still want it, so she used to start doing that as well. Be like, okay, so I'm going to use Hazel's rule. Do I really need it right now, or do I really want it? But I remember one of the last times that I went shopping with her in Australia, she bought this bag and she thought it was on special, but it wasn't until we got home. We got back and I said to her, I've looked at the price of this. Did you realize that you just spent like the main price? And she said, you know what? I don't care because I love it. And she said, it's the first time I've said that in a long time, but said, I don't care. So, that was an emotional kind of thing. I think it's really important that there is an emotion attached to it. And as I've started to look at more of what you do, I realize just how important that is to like look at that side of our finances because there's a lot of people who feel like out here in the wider world that we're doing everything right as far as looking after our finances. But there are so many times when we can get a feeling of overwhelm. And as you mentioned earlier, a little bit of shame might come in because, I don't know, we're purchasing things that we don't really need or we're doing it just to prove ourselves or whatever the reasons are. But when we're like that, what really is going on under the surface when this happens? What sort of things are happening behind the scenes, I suppose.
So some of those decisions that we make, so, and some of those situations that we deal with. We can only ever work with what we know in that moment. So I work with a lot of people that get to their early to mid 30s or older and go, I should have had a pension. I shouldn't have done this with my credit card. I should have been investing. I should have been doing this. I should have bought a house. I hate the word should, but we
Mm,
beat ourselves with the word should because there's this expectation to have everything in place by the time we get to our mid to late 30s. Now, the biggest thing we need to consider when we're looking at those sort of historic decisions is the part of our brain that deals with those decisions, especially around money and purchasing and the emotional attachment to money and the things money can give us, doesn't actually mature until we're about 25, 26. So
mm,
we hit that point of marriage, kids, house, all that stuff, and our brains have only just matured enough to make that decision. So we're then dealing with probably 10 years of credit, because if you think we can get credit finance at 18, a lot of
yeah.
people join the workplace at 16 to 18, even if it's only a Saturday job or a job to fit in around uni. So
Mhm.
we've got 10 to 12 years of having our own money, but not really understanding, one, how it works, because nobody teaches the
No.
compound effect of interest on a credit card, for example. Or two, the emotional attachment, the emotions that we're feeling towards that money. Now, I know this from my own experience, in that when I gave up my corporate job, I was pregnant with my second child. We was around £40,000 in debt. I was early 30s. And my husband had just been encouraged to go self-employed, having been previously employed with a lovely expenses account. And as we all
Wow.
know, employment, self-employment, if you're in that position, self-employment at the beginning is practically unemployed because we need to wait for that time to work over. So to make those decisions, we ended up in a debt management plan. And to do that debt management plan was one of the most, it was pretty awful. I had two kids under 5 and they're expensive little things. But it was also one of the best things we did. And it really shaped my money story and why I do this now, because it helped me understand, A, the emotions that had got us to that point, because some of it was about everyday spending, but some of it was about like you said about your mum, it's like, I'll just go and buy that. Oh, I really like that dress, or I really like them shoes, or that handbag, or whatever, that telly, and we just go and buy it because it makes us feel better. But then you get to the point of like, oh my word, I've got to deal with this, and I've got to deal with
Mm,
it. How do I deal with it? So I work a lot with helping people that are then still in good jobs, going, how do we deal with this? How do we put a plan in place where we're not removing our ability to do the things we want to do, but we are still clearing down that debt? So I work with people to balance because I believe that we should have an income that supports us, that we're happy with, that is joyful. So I work on income. I work on retaining that income. So investments, savings, planning for the tax bill, planning for what my nan used to call the boiler fund, that emergency
yep.
pot of when it all goes wrong, there there's money, whether you need a new boiler or a new tire or something needs to repair, and you've got instant money you can put your hand on. But I also work with people to spend their money, even if they're in debt. We work to spend it on things that are aligned with their values, with
Right.
what is important to them. I will never tell somebody you can't go to Costa and have that mocha and the croissant. Because if that brings that person that moment of joy for that day, that's important.
Hmm.
Because we can't just say, what I will say is we would look at, where do we spend our money? Does it bring us joy? Is it a habit? And is that habit feeding us in a joyful way? Because if we are spending an awful lot of money in Costa multiple times a day, do we need to be doing that? Is it a habit that's serving us or is it a habit that's not?
Yeah.
So that awareness, everything I do starts with awareness. And I'm not lying. It can be hard. Just opening your app, printing a bank statement, looking at that. Where do I spend this money? It creates all sorts of emotions within anybody that I've done this task with. I've had people that I've done this task with, and even at the mention of me going, I need you to go through your bank statement and look at what you're spending. And she's just burst into tears because she's just been so avoidant of this task. And it's like, but we're
Mm.
not judging. We're just seeing. We need to know what is happening to move us forward. We can't make change until we know. Because if you do what you've always done, you're going to get what you've always got.
Yeah,
So
I
they're
think that's
the
right.
places I'd start.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, being self-aware is very difficult. It's probably one of the harder things to do.
Yeah.
And I do think with a lot of things, but I think with money, we are really, I don't know, really kind of, I don't know, at our own beck and call. Like that's probably the wrong way to say it, but we are basically the people that are going to make the decision, hastily or not, with this money. And sometimes it's not our money, and you forget it because it's like, oh, here's my card. I'll just like
And
there,
that's
and
it.
it's
These
so
things
yeah,
are a nightmare. We just tap and tap and tap and
yeah.
tap and tap.
And
And
then
it has, yeah,
yeah,
there's
suddenly
none
you
of that.
get this thing, and you're like, oh my gosh, you've suddenly gone, oh, tap that, and it's just, and you do, and you make things easier on yourself. Like if I'm, sort of, I don't know, transferring some money to one of my sons just because they need it ad hocly or whatever, I've gone and put them both as a instant pay thing on my NatWest app so that I just click it and it just, pulls them up. Then I think to myself, that doesn't really even give me my capacity to think this through. I'm literally pushing the button and then, but I think also I've because obviously I've started my own business in the last sort of what I don't know 14, 15 months or something. Um and when you work full time with somebody, you've got this salary coming in, it works really well. And you were mentioning about starting off self-employed and that's really a hard thing to do. I never realized until someone put me into this thing called Metal, which is a NatWest, like part of their NatWest thing, that I created these little training pots or these little pots. And I'm like, one of them's called tax and one of them's called savings. And I then every time there's a percentage that now goes across as soon as I get any payments, it just goes straight across, which is quite a nice thing because you look at what your balance is, but then you think, well, that's just my balance because if I go down there, I've like saved money in my savings, but I've also covering my tax. So it's building up to pay a tax bill if and when it's required.
And I think the other
Um,
thing with when we start self-employed, especially when we come out of a corporate role or any paid position, um, you lose that income, that paid income that is guaranteed,
yeah,
and all of a sudden you have a different identity. So there's a massive identity shift I see a lot in people coming out of a paid role and all of a sudden they're like, oh, I've got no income. I've got to be, I want to be doing this, whatever it is that they want to be doing, but I've got to be social media manager. I've got to be
yeah,
accountant. I've got to be advertising and marketing myself. I've got to, all the got tos, back to that
yeah,
should thing again. And that massively undermines our ability to make those cognitive decisions. So
mm,
we're used to having, 1,500, 2,000, 3,000 pound a month, and all of a sudden that's gone. And we're paying all this money to do our advertising, to do our social media, or we're trying to use the time that we could be working with clients, we're using
yeah,
to do this stuff. So there's a massive identity shift, and that's that emotional pull of I need to be earning. So when we work as with newly self-employed people, I'm always like, but we start with, what does success look like? Because, if we start with, right, I want to be replacing my 50 grand a year full-time salary, that's fine. How are we doing that? How does your
mm,
body feel in doing that because there's a massive difference between having a 50 grand a year corporate salary that comes in when you're paid and you follow the rules and you do the stuff. And when you're self-employed, it's you.
Yeah.
You're putting you on the line to be very vulnerable, to price your service, to compete with X, Y, and Z in
Yeah.
the arena. And you're like, oh, I can't charge that because I'm not as good as them and them and them. But you don't know
Yeah. So
their
then,
story and they don't know your story. Just because you're
mm,
new to this sector, you're not necessarily new to this industry. You're new
yeah.
in a different way. But you have all that experience and that knowledge and those skills that are valuable. But we naturally try to charge on an hourly rate because that's how we are taught in a job.
Yeah.
We're paid
Yeah.
X amount of money for 35, 40 hours a week. At the end of the week, we go home.
Yeah.
And we try to replicate that in our self-employed business. And that's not doable.
No.
Very different dynamic. A very different dynamic when you're doing everything.
Yeah. And that must be one of the ways, I guess, that you can help people as well, because people who are, so it's not just individuals that are in corporate or, parents that need help, sort of re-establishing themselves and understanding where they sit, but it's also people in business. And all of them, I guess, there's an underlying decision that has to be made at certain points in any of that across the board. So it's very hard, and we've kind of mentioned it. Might say no to it, put it back for a little bit, put it in a basket or whatever. But what are one or two things that people can do in that very moment when they're either going to hit a button, tap their card, or just literally think somebody's asked me to do something, I want to say yes, and they go to say yes, but actually they shouldn't be doing it so quickly. What are one or two things in that very moment that someone can do to regulate their nervous system, regain clarity?
The biggest thing I would say, and this is where people don't do it, is does it feel right? So we go to press the button, we go to say yes to the project. Is that feeling in your belly or in your heart? Is that one of nervous sightedness? That slightly nervous, oh, this is new, but oh, this is exciting and a new challenge kind of thing. Because if it's that feeling, that's expansive. That's a yes. That's your body going, yes, this is really good. So we need to listen to that feeling. If your belly is going, why the hell am I doing this? I need the money, but why am I doing it? I don't want to do it. It's not really, but I really need the
Yeah.
money because we get caught in this space of, oh, that project, it'll give me good exposure, it'll give me good this, it'll give me good, but I don't want to.
Mm,
Because sometimes saying yes to something when our body has gone, no, is the worst place to be because we literally keep ourselves stuck. And actually, sometimes we need to say no to a task or a client. If that gut feeling is that, oh my God, this is going to be a big pain in the backside that's going to create me more work, there's two options in those situations. You either up the fee so that if they do become a pain in the backside, you're being paid accordingly for that
yeah.
pain in the backside factor,
Yeah.
and you won't resent them so much because a lot of that work that becomes additional, you start to resent it and you go, actually, I don't want to do this. This is really not what I want to be doing. You're not paying me enough for this aggravation. Or you go, no. And there's nothing wrong in saying no to something that really doesn't feel right. It's really hard. And don't get me wrong, it is incredibly hard to say
Yeah.
something. And you don't have to say no and be rude. You can say,
No.
thank you for the opportunity. This isn't something that's right for me. But my biggest tip would be to stop and listen to your body. You listen. Does it feel exciting or does it feel, I need the money, but
Mm,
because that's the feeling of going, that idea, the concept of going with your gut is huge because your gut is your second brain. Your gut is your body
Mm,
talking. If it doesn't feel right, you either need to price accordingly and take the job anyway, or say no. But we need to stop and think and listen to what our body is saying rather than, and whether that's buying a new laptop or setting up our website or taking a job or buying a car or any of those big decisions, stop and think, stop and feel. Not even about thinking, because we're not using logic, we're using that bodily feeling.
yeah.
Does this feel right? Because that going with your gut is so important.
And I think you're right. And I remember when I had been made redundant, I went for a job and um, I was one out of two and I didn't get it. And they said they were going to go with the other person. They had slightly more industry experience, blah, blah. So I went, okay, fine. But it took them a week to tell me that. And it was like, but there was only two of us. And anyway, so it took them a week. 5 weeks later, they rang me and said the other person hadn't worked out. And then they were wanting to offer me the job. So I sat there and I wanted to say yes so badly because I was like, that's the money, you know, like, um, and it's nice that someone's, offering this to me, blah, blah, blah. But in my gut, I was like, you're right, it led me because I was trying to say yes and then something was holding me back. And I'm glad it did because the thing that was holding me back was, is this really right for you? Is this really right? Because it took them, and it wasn't until the gut started to talk that my logic then kind of kicked in a little bit. And then I started to go, took them a week to tell me, why didn't the other person work out? They apparently had more industry experience. So I kind of thought, but if my gut hadn't have been kicking in at the time, I probably would have said yes. And it would have been completely the wrong decision
Yeah.
for
And it
me.
is, and our gut knows long before our logical mind does. That gut feeling is 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 our body's way of talking to us, and it cottons on much faster than the logical part of our brain. So if it
Mm,
doesn't feel right, it probably isn't. But the biggest place to start with that and feeling into that gut feeling is that quiet space to give ourselves that time to actually listen, because we're so busy doing, we don't
mm,
be. So part of our gut feeling is about our being. And we're so busy with the this and that and the other and the school run and the shopping and all the stuff, we don't stop long enough to feel what's in our body. And that's so important. So important. Feel into our
right.
body. The other place to start is when you think about it, when you think about an opportunity or a purchase or something, you said about you wanted a couple of. The other place is, where do you breathe? When this feels exciting, it should be like fluttery and, exciting.
Yeah.
But it should be deeply calm. It should be that space of, this feels really good. When I breathe, it feels expansive. It doesn't feel like it catches. It just feels right. If something doesn't feel right, you nearly always, if you don't feel it in your gut, you'll nearly always feel it in your chest. So when you breathe, you'll either breathe faster or you'll feel it catching in your chest or in your throat. Because if it doesn't feel right, your body activates its sympathetic nervous system and you go into that fight flight mode because your body's going, I need to do this, but I don't want to do this. And your body's literally doing battle with itself. So it does it within your breath and within your nervous system. So if you're not hearing your gut, think about your breath. How does
Mm,
this feel? Am I feeling it? Does my heart feel like it's racing? Do I feel it catching in my throat? There's so many ways our body is trying to tell us the right process because it knows long before the
mm,
brain.
long before. You're
The brain's
right.
quite stupid, really. If we actually listen to the rest of our body, our brain is actually really quite stupid.
Yeah, it does take a bit to catch up, I think, sometimes.
Yes.
Um, so just before we go, Sarah, do you have like a final tip or quote that you love and you could share?
My biggest tip before you do anything, but even before you start your day, if before you switch your lap, I tend to do this before while my laptop's starting up. Just stop. in that 3 minutes or whatever it takes for your laptop to boot itself up, just stop and breathe and just stop and like reflect, because that's the biggest place to be. If we stop first, that those transitions into our day are so important, because that's where our body catches up or where our brain
Mm.
catches up. We
Yeah.
have those opportunities to feel. So that would be my biggest place. Just build those little breaks, 2 or 3 minutes into the day where you're not going, must check my emails, must send
Mm.
this proposal, must do this, must put the dinner on, must get that. All of that stuff. Just
Yeah.
stop. My neighbours must think I'm mental, because literally I pull up onto the drive and I sit in the car for 2 minutes and just be, not
Yeah.
scrolling, just to be completely me and still in the
Yeah.
moment. They must think I'm completely mad. But if I'm on my own, I don't get straight out of my car. I sit there just
Well,
to
I
create
think
that
that's a
space.
really good strategy. And I suppose I do it in the morning a bit when I listen to my music. It's my calming bit. It's my like, brings me back down from anything else. Um, and I always do it in the evenings as well. It's my reflection of my day. That's how I finish the day, is always like, what, is there something that went not so good? Okay, what was it? Was it in my control? And if it was nothing in my control and I learned something from it, then I just park it. And then it's like, what went well? Because there's always something that went well. We don't tend to focus on what went well. We're like, what
And
went
that's a
not
really
so well.
interesting point, that we don't focus on the bits that don't go well. I always, um, when my kids have been really like going through a really tricky time, and all they do is, well, this went wrong, and this person was mean, and this person did this, and this did that, and we could apply it in our own lives. Or this person was
Mm.
really horrible to me, or I got that horrible email, or all of that stuff. I have done around the dinner table. I don't do it as much now because they give me the information. But when
Yeah.
they were younger, it used to be, okay, just tell me 3 good things about today. I
Yeah.
don't
See,
necessarily
that's
do the
great.
whole gratitude thing of with them. I don't do the whole 10
No.
gratitude pieces, but 3 little snapshots of something good, or something that made you smile, or something that brought you joy. And it could be as simple as, with them, it was as simple as, well, I'm not at school anymore, or I've got my
Yeah.
favorite thing for dinner. It doesn't have we When we're doing these reflective pieces, they don't have to be earth shattering. I got that proposal, or I've
No.
won
They could
a
just be
10
the
grand
simplest of
contract.
things.
It can be as simple as, I'm here for another day.
Yep.
It can just be as simple as that. It doesn't have to be
Yep.
huge, but that, starting from that place of gratitude and being able to feel that in our body, such an important place to start.
It definitely is. Well, Sarah, thank you so much for being on my podcast. It's
Thank
been
you.
great. And I've learned a lot. So that means I'm hoping everyone else has learned a lot as well.
Thank you.
You're welcome.